Friends, once again, our gospel reminds us the most important truth, that we are known, that the good shepherd is the one who calls his sheep one by one. They know the voice, they recognize him, and they come. They do not need to be dragged, they do not need to be forced, but they follow the Lord after hearing. And perhaps, friends, this is the most important thing for us. Do we realize that the Lord always calls our names? Can we in our prayer listen to our names being called? That we are important. We are not just here to be useful. Sometimes our worth is always in our usefulness, in our productivity. And that's why sometimes when we get older, we feel so out of place. But our worth is really being our child of God, a son and daughter of the Father. And to do that, we need to hear the voice of the Lord each and every time. This is already the 4th week of Easter. In the first 3 weeks, we have the women, Mary Magdalene, hearing the voice of the Lord call her name. We have Thomas, who the Lord comes to. Put your hands in my side, put your fingers here. And we have the Emmaus disciples, whom the Lord walks together with. The Lord always calls each and every one by name. I often give to my penitents in the confessional Isaiah 43, verse 1 to 4. And verse 1 says, I have called you by name, you are mine. And to be able to listen to the voice of the Lord, that begins our response. Dear friends, when we start to listen to our name being called by the Lord, then we know how the Lord sees us. Because many times we listen, or rather we hear, but do not listen. We know that the Lord calls us, but do we allow him to really speak? We don't allow him to speak because the world is so noisy, because we rather see what the world says in our social media, in our entertainment. We rather hear comparisons from people who are important to us. Or do we hear what the Lord is saying? Do we put down our phones? Do we put down our devices so that we can listen to the Lord? So that you can hear him call us by name. The Lord wants to speak to us. Sometimes I hear young children, even adults saying, but I don't hear his voice. We hear our loved one's voice. We can recognize it over the phone. We can recognize it in a crowded food court. Why? Because we have this relationship with them. And once we have a relationship of that love, we recognize what his voice sounds like. Any voice that puts us down is not from him. Any voice that says we are beyond mercy, that we are sinners through and through, and that we cannot be redeemed, is not from him. Any voice that says, you are my beloved son and daughter, and that you are in whom I'm well pleased. And you can come from this dignity and this identity to form who you are. And then we respond in our prayer. Dear friends, when we spend the time in silence to listen to the voice of the Lord, he speaks. When we take our earphones off for a moment, when we walk in nature, to allow the Lord to speak to us. And who is this Jesus who speaks to us? Who is this good shepherd? We hear that in our psalm that we sang, that we responded. The Lord is my shepherd, there is nothing I shall want. If I walk in the valley of darkness, no evil will I fear. Your crook and your staff, with these you give me comfort. How does a crook and a staff give comfort when the darkness is still there? Jesus does not promise to take us out of the darkness, but he promises us his presence. Can you feel my presence? Can you feel the crook and your staff leading you to what is right, prodding you when you go astray? Can you listen, or are you going to continue in your sinful ways? Can you come back with the crook and the staff that I am calling you? It is difficult, and that's what calls to die to ourselves, die to sinfulness, and rise to the new life that the Lord wants to give us. And the Lord does not just scold us or tell us this good advice. He walks the talk. He walks through every difficulty from the cross to the resurrection. And he invites us to join with him, to participate with him in this cross. And this is what St. Peter tells us in our second reading. He was bearing our faults in his own body on the cross, so that we might die to our faults and live for holiness. Through his wounds, we have been healed. You have gone astray like sheep, but now you have come back to the shepherd, the guardian of your souls. The good shepherd is not just the good shepherd from afar. The good shepherd is the one who becomes lamb, victim, sacrifice for us. He does not just encourage us from outside. He enters into our sufferings and leads us to the resurrection. Dear friends, when we say we want to follow Jesus, when we want to say we want to listen to this voice of the Good Shepherd, it means living this life as well. That through everything we continue to cling to him. St. Peter also tells us, he was insulted but did not retaliate with insults. He was tortured, he made no threats. He put his trust in the righteous judge. If we say we follow the Lord, this is how we are called to live. We listen to the voice of the shepherd who tells us mercy, not just justice. Mercy, not just revenge. Trust, not resentment, not bitterness. Trust, not despair. Listen to the voice of the one who knows you and I fully. And then we will live a new life, and then we will live differently because we are following our Good Shepherd. We will see ourselves being more generous, not only in money, in our openness, in our love, in our time, to think of others rather than ourselves, to lay down our little desires because of another. And many of us already do that in a little way. Parents do that for their children, sacrificing some holidays so that they can have a better education. We see that in our volunteers, in our service members, especially in those that are very understated. The housebound team member who goes and visits the housebound, visits the sick in the hospitals for year after year without much recognition, without much thanks, and yet they still continue to do that. And maybe in a little way, even at work, where we put our priorities to be with our aged parents, so that we put down a possible promotion. And these sacrifices that we make because we follow our Good Shepherd, because we listen to his voice, because we discern what the Lord is saying to us. Friends, Jesus puts it very clearly in our gospel. The thief comes to only steal and kill and destroy. I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. Putting away a promotion to stay with our parents doesn't seem like financial sense. Maybe what is the Lord inviting us? What is the goodness that the Lord is asking? Not that every case is like that. It's not that it's a black and white thing. But the point is discernment. The point is, do I have this relationship with the Lord? Can I respond to this love, this generosity that he is asking of me? In a special way today, we also celebrate Vocation Sunday. In a special way, the church wants to reiterate and re-emphasize the importance of the priests, the religious, and of course all vocations. But really the priests and the religious who are called to make the Lord present. We are all called to do that because we are baptized priest, prophet, and king. But in a special way, can the priest and the religious make the Lord in his real presence for the priests, and in the way that they live their life for the religious brothers and sisters. Especially for the religious, there is more and more dearth of vocations. We used to have them in the schools, in the hospitals. We used to call them for retreats. Now more and more, there is less of them. And something is lacking, something is missing. The priests too, yes, now there are 20 in the seminary, but there are hardly enough to even cover. We're not at break-even point. Our elderly priests are falling sick. Some are having crisis. And there is a great need for the generosity that the Lord invites us to listen to the call of the Lord. Parents, especially mothers and fathers, if your children are seeking this holiness, do not bar them from really the Lord's call. I remember a parent I met who didn't want her daughter to go for this retreat because she was afraid that it would make her too involved in church. It was a longer retreat, and she was afraid that she might become a religious sister. And I was unfortunately not able to persuade her. It was one of my leaders at the time, the youth leaders. Now she doesn't go to church anymore. Dear friends, let us not reject the Lord's voice when He calls. Let us not be obstacles before the Lord. All of us, parents, grandparents, people who lead, people who influence others, we too are the shepherds that the Lord invites us, and that we are called to lay down our lives so that Christ, the Lord, can be known. As we receive Jesus in our Eucharist, we ask the Lord for this grace, firstly to make space in our noisy lives so that we can listen to His voice, that we can put aside things and listen to our name being called, so that He can ask us to respond to the generosity that He leads us, and that we may follow our name being called, the Master who leads us through everything, the Master who calls our name, and that we follow where He leads. That the fullness of life is what we desire in the different vocations that we have, but really to bring Christ wherever we may go. For this we pray.